Welcome everybody, it's Jason up, it's the New 80's Revolution, and it is a special Back to the 80's episode tonight, ladies and gentlemen, just a few short nights away from Halloween. From Halloween 2020. Tonight on Back to the 80's, we take a look at our Halloween, my Halloween memories growing up in the 1980s. We look at the costumes, we talk about the candy, we talk about the television, the special Halloween episodes of Charlie Brown, of Garfield. We look at all that stuff and we take a little bit of an up close and personal look at these boxes. What is in these boxes, ladies and gentlemen? I'll tell you what's in these boxes. These are the most uncomfortable costume that kids ever had to wear in their entire life. We take a look at all that and so much more tonight on a special Halloween episode of Back to the 80's.
It was a decade when Marty McFly had to get back to the future, rocking our Walkmans, losing our minds over Rubik Cubes, and Mr. T pitying a whole bunch of fools. A time when we were all moonwalking, when arcades ruled and two Italian plumbers would save the home video console empire. We all asked those burning, pivotal questions. Where's the beef? And who shot JR? Saturday morning heroes who saved our school-shattered souls. Yes, the food, TV, movies, toys, games, cartoons, everything. Take a look back, year by glorious neon-illuminated year, as Jason Up takes you back to the 80s.
Welcome back, everybody. That's right, like I said, the New 80's Revolution is back with a special episode of Back to the 80's. Tonight, we take a closer look at the Halloween memories of kids in the 80's. What a time. Guys, is it just me, or did every single holiday just feel a little bit different back then? I would say yes. Now, obviously that's because we were kids and things just felt different, but no, there's absolutely something different about the way holidays used to feel back then. Whether it was the build-up, whether it was our school's involvement, whether it was our friends' involvement, I don't know. But I try as much as I can to recreate those feelings that we got. Really, we're approaching the time of year, we're here. We're in the time of year where kids of the 80's began to lose their minds. Okay? Even though we head back to school in September, we knew as soon as the weather changed, as soon as it started to get a little fall, as soon as it started to get dark sooner. I remember that for me as a kid, getting dark sooner meant special things were happening. Special things were on the way. And of course that meant the big three, right? The big holiday threesome begins in a couple of nights. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Halloween. Halloween 2020 is probably going to be a little bit different than Halloween 1985. But I know that for me, and for most of us, all of us watching this show, our excitement began to build right about now. Our excitement meter, and really, what are we waiting for, guys? We're waiting for Christmas, right? This begins the kickoff to the greatest season of all time back then, and the greatest season of all time for me right now. So we're going to talk about Halloween. Halloween, for me, was special, and I think of the big three, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, back in childhood, they were ranked in order. Christmas was obviously number one, blown away. Still is today. No other day, no other holiday compares. But I've flip-flopped in my adult life because back when I was a kid, Thanksgiving was more important to me than Halloween. We'd go to my grandparents, and they're obviously the big dinner, the football games. Maybe I'm not even sure. I'm pretty sure that the football games existed back in the 80s. Yeah, they've been running Thanksgiving football games forever, but usually the Dallas Cowboys were on, and that was my team as a kid. But I don't know. There was just something special about Thanksgiving. Maybe because it was like the official, Christmas countdown began. And Halloween was, fun, and I loved it. But I wasn't super passionate as a kid. Now they've kind of flip-flopped. Thanksgiving to me is, kind of another day. But Thanksgiving or Halloween has taken over importance in this house. Obviously, my kids have a blast, but we begin celebrating or building to Christmas on Halloween night. And if you've checked out some of the Facebook photos over the years, we start hanging up the Christmas tree and putting up Christmas decorations on Halloween night. The kids are stuffing their faces full of Skittles and Snickers bars, and we're stringing lights on the Christmas tree. That's how we do it here, and that's how we're always going to do it. We're going to. I want 2 months of Christmas, but we're not talking about Christmas tonight. No, indeed, we're talking about Halloween. And as I said in the intro, why was it different for us? Why was it why was there a different feel in the air for us as kids? And some of the things that I could think about, the build-up. The build-up was, the build-up for Halloween to me began October 1st. You'd get all these advertisements, including, some of our favorite McDonald's commercials that we're going to take a look at here, I'm not sure. But the build-up, guys, the build-up began early in October. The build-up towards, and I remember the fast food places would sell the Halloween coupons, and they would start advertising them like October 1st. And of course the Happy Meals and the decorations and, the stores were all promoting Halloween. And do they do that today? I mean, when I go to a Walmart or a Target, I see candy and costumes being promoted. So I guess it's happening. But my kids right now are not thinking of they only started thinking of Halloween like a few days ago, when we reminded them that Halloween was coming. And why is that the case? Why did we have to remind them that Halloween was coming 5 days ago? I don't know. Are the schools involved? Are the kids involved anymore? Is the build-up anywhere near what it used to be when we were kids? And I don't think so. I think it all began October 1st. That's when the build-up began. And you would have these Halloween parties at school. And that was something that we all looked forward to. You'd have a costume day where you would dress up and you'd go to school. And it was a party all day. You'd go from class to class or however it was back in middle school, you had one class. But candy, you were handing out candy to your friends and eating candy all day. And there was always something special about eating candy in school. That was always huge for a kid. But the build-up, the school involvement, the Halloween art projects, the pumpkins, drawing cardboard or construction paper pumpkins in school and bringing them home, basically making your own family's Halloween decorations and, having them hang on the fridge or the door or whatever. Different time, right? The build-up was huge for us back then. We could not wait. And our favorite television shows, our favorite cartoons were all focused on Halloween. Some of the sitcoms that we watched had Halloween episodes, Mr. Belvedere or Who's the Boss or, whatever our favorite sitcom was, usually had kind of a silly horror-themed episode to go along with it. And our cartoons, guys, our Garfield Halloween, our Charlie Brown Halloween, the Great Pumpkin was such an event in our house. It was such an event, and if I recall, it wasn't on Halloween night. I mean, that would be foolish. of the networks to put it on Halloween night. So it was like a few nights before, you'd be sitting around watching The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and it was a night. That was an event. That was an event. You know, those special holiday episodes of those cartoons were an event in our home as kids. You knew ahead of time they were coming because of the TV guide. And because it was 1985, we weren't DVRing it. We weren't streaming it from CBS Now. No, indeed. You had to be parked in front of the TV at 8 p.m. so that you could start watching, you know, the 1 hour block of 2 half-hour cartoons. And it always included Charlie Brown's Great Pumpkin. And again, if I recall, there might have been cartoons to choose from on different networks. So like CBS was playing Charlie Brown and maybe Garfield, and another channel, ABC or something, might have had their own little Halloween special going on too. So you had to pick and choose where you were going to be and where your loyalty was going to lie. But again, that was an event. Right? We now own The Great Pumpkin on Blu-ray, and my kid can watch it in, you know, July. It's not a one-time deal anymore. It's not a special event. You know, it's not a special family event anymore like it used to be. And trust me and my sisters were parked in front of the TV a couple nights before Halloween watching Great Pumpkin. There was always a channel that had a little run of horror movies, you know, a fun little run of horror movies, and I remember Halloween night. I think USA on Halloween night would do, you know, a straight run of like Friday the 13th or even the Halloween movie. You know, they would mix it up, and maybe from like 4 o'clock to like 2 in the morning, there would be a steady run of horror movies on Halloween night, on the actual night of Halloween. The atmosphere, guys, the feeling, you know, the feeling in the air was different. We don't have that same feeling that we did. And I remember Halloween day, if it was a school day, that's all we were talking about in school was what was going on that night. Whether you were hanging out with your friends, you know, whether you were going, what an event that was. If you got a chance to go trick-or-treating with your friend, man, that was, you've reached the peak. But usually I was with my sisters, but the day of would just be huge. And I think like the cafeteria, you know, at school that would be pizza day or something. You know, it was just always, they just cared more, right? It just meant something more. And then you get home. You get home, and most of us would come home around, you know, 3:30. You know, parents are rolling in at 4 or 5, and it's on. It's on from there. Remember, it's getting darker earlier, right? Earlier than it is now because I think they changed the time that we roll back the clocks. So by 5:30, it was on. Right? That feeling was in the air. That feeling, you were ready to go. There was chaos around the house as you were all searching for bags to put your candy in. I remember I always wanted a pillowcase, but we'd always end up getting these pumpkins, you know, that I would look at them ahead of time and go, this isn't going to work. You know, this isn't going to be nearly enough. So I always wanted the pillowcase. And then I'm getting yelled at because I'm actually pulling my pillowcase off my pillow in my bed and, you know, getting in trouble. Don't use that pillowcase. But it was on. It was, you know, whether it was late night costume scrambling or last minute costume scrambling or just getting ready. Getting ready. Your mom and your dad are dressing up yourself. They're dressing up your siblings. And they're getting ready to shove you out into the world. And we got started early. I'm talking like maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30 at the latest. It's on. We're busting out the door, and we're up and down the street in a pack of 3, me and my 2 sisters, and whoever, you know, joined us or tagged along. So the night definitely began a little bit earlier for us, and we would just go. And we often lived in neighborhoods that were, I remember we lived in apartments a lot growing up. And we didn't care. We would just be, we would go until, I mean, for us as kids, like 9 o'clock was pushing it. Like, 9 o'clock was approaching, like the witching hour. So we'd probably go to like 8:39, and we'd come home sweaty, maybe rained on. The costume is torn. The mask is long gone. The mask is gone. Because as you'll see in a minute, these are not comfortable. They weren't comfortable. You got cuts. You got a few cuts maybe under your eyes for when these plastic masks dug deep into your skin, causing a staph infection. That silly little thin rubber band died a long time ago. So we went out looking like something, and we came back looking like sweaty versions of ourselves with massive, massive bags of candy. What a night. What a great night. But it wasn't over. It wasn't over because you had the routine when you got home. There was a routine. There's a part 2 to trick-or-treating, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But first, what do we have here? We've got some costumes. We've got some costumes. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, back in our day, back in the 80s, our costumes came in a box that weighed nothing, a feather. This was our Halloween costume. And I cannot do it justice inside this box. So let's take a closer look at what these costumes are. All right, here we are with a flashback to a 1980s Halloween. Oh, would you look at these kids? Hello, kids. Trick or treat. And who are you today?
I'm Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger, yes you are. And you, sir?
I'm G.I. Joe.
Yeah, you're G.I. Joe. And then we have those idiot dogs in the background that are just barking and scaring all the Halloween kids. Let's take a look at, how's this mask feel? Is that very comfy?
Yeah.
That plastic thin mask with this tiny little rubber band. And look, is this flammable? Is this flame retardant, or are you going to catch on fire?
No.
You're not. Okay, and how about you, Freddy Krueger? What do you have? Wow, you've got the Nightmare on Elm Street sweater and that face. How's it feeling on your neck? Is it cutting into your eyes? Can you see in front of you? You can. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to you, too.
Okay, goodbye. Here you are, guys. There is a, very coincidental that a few nights before Halloween, a couple of kids come to the door with some 80s costumes on. I mean, what a coincidence that I'm down here making an 80s. Anyway, you got to take a close look at those things, those sheets of vinyl and plastic that we had to wear all day and all night on Halloween. Those were the costumes of the 80s, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is. Here's the mask. I mean, take a look at this. Very, very thin little piece of something. I don't know, paper plastic, I guess. Here's the tiny little thin rubber band that really has a shelf life of like 4 hours. It's of course attached to a staple. These are attached to staples, and so eventually either the rubber band would break or the staple would pull through the plastic and be done. What's crazy about these guys? If I took my thumb and rubbed it enough on the inside of the eye hole, I would slice my thumb. I could produce blood right now if I wanted to. And these things had to go right next to our eyes. And so often, the lower lid of our eyes, our upper cheek, would rub on this. And we would cut ourselves wearing these masks. So not only were we flammable, we could also blind ourselves on trick or treat on Halloween night with these masks. But was that going to stop us? Was that really going to stop us? A little eye blood, right? A little flame that we had to put out, right? We were right in the middle of the whole stop, drop, and roll campaign anyway, so use it if you got it. And there's a pretty good chance that we wore these costumes to school. Okay. Some schools, some years, we could wear our costumes to school on Halloween Day. Which means there's a fantastic chance that these costumes are destroyed by the time we get home. And I know for sure that happened to me at least once. And it was a mad scramble. I was pretty convinced that my night was over. There would be no trick-or-treating. There was a mad scramble. We had to run to some kind of a discount store. And they had nothing, of course, but a makeup kit. A little box of makeup. Where, you know, if you had a Hollywood makeup artist as a mom, you know, she could make you up to look good. But what are we doing? You know, I never looked like the vampire. I never looked like the guy that was beaten up, you know, with the fake wound and the blood. No, I would smear the white paint on, put some black under my eyes, and put red near my mouth. That was it. That's the best I could do. But I had to do that in a pinch one night because I broke my costume at school. Of course I did. Well, guys, so we come in, right? We come in from trick-or-treating, and how many of you guys had moms that made you wear a coat because it was too cold? And, you know, these costumes are you know, plastic. So how many of us were really just coats walking around with a mask? We were coats and a mask. That was Halloween. Because for some reason it was colder back then, which which has also changed in the 2020s. It always seemed colder on Halloween, right? It always seemed like winter was coming on Halloween. But no more. No more, ladies and gentlemen. I guess that's good for us because we don't have to wear coats with our costumes anymore. So we would come in on Halloween night, and that was part one. Because part two begins when you walk in the door and you take a look at that bounty, the treasure that you have collected. You dump your pillowcase out on the floor, and you dive into a pool of beautiful candy. Candy that you love, candy that you hate, candy that you've never had before. It's all over the floor. And of course, our moms would have to sift through the candy and make sure that there were no what? No razor blades or needles, right? Because in the 80s, and probably the 70s and beyond, there was this urban legend that, you know, your crazy neighbor would put needles or razor blades in the candy. And so, you know, your parents had to inspect it and make sure that you weren't going to cut off your tongue eating, you know, a Baby Ruth. We would always get, there would always be the weird neighbors who just didn't get it and who would give out food for Halloween. And you know that that's your perfect way to, you know, lace it with arsenic or shove the razor blade in there. So we would always have the weirdo neighbor that would give out an apple. And you knew that that apple was never going to be eaten. You would get that apple home, it would dump out of your bag, and your mom would toss it in the garbage immediately because it must have contained poisonous needles and razor blades. Had to. There was also the weirdo neighbor that would give out bags of popcorn. Those aren't getting eaten. There was also the weirdo neighbor that would give out a little bag of pennies. You know, 7 or 8 pennies for Halloween. That's not a good Halloween gift. As I got older, I certainly appreciated the Wendy's coupons because you'd get like a free Frosty. That's all right. I'll take that any day. But you dumped out, and if you had siblings, ladies and gentlemen, you knew what you had to do with that candy. You needed to gather up that candy, and you needed to take it into your bedroom and find the most secure hiding spot you have ever found and bury that candy so that your siblings did not raid it, right? We had to hide it. So I would always hide my candy in my dresser, and honestly, I would eat. What was with the parents back then? They weren't concerned that I was taking 43 pounds of candy to my bedroom, and there was a pretty good chance that I was going to eat most of it on Halloween night. That's okay. We could handle that back then. Our stomachs were tougher. We could handle it back then. Speaking of candy, favorite candies of the New 80s Revolution back in the day, I was always very, very excited to get blow pops. I thought those were the best. Half sucker, half bubblegum. Tremendous. School started to allow candies. Certain candies you could bring to school. And that was the highlight of a kid's day, to bring candy to school and eat it throughout the day. And I remember blow pops. And when I got into 6th grade, we had a school bookstore. And you'd just buy candy. Blow Pops and Now and Laters are top on my kid candy list. So anything fruity I was really into. Anything sour, anything chewy. Starbursts, they're great. Like I said, Blow Pops, Now and Laters. I'm not sure if Skittles were back then in the little Halloween size packets. I don't think they had them. Gum, Bazooka gum was always tops on my list. As far as chocolate goes, anything with nuts I was good with. The Snickers, the Baby Ruths, the back then, man, we had like Fifth Avenue bars and the 10 grand bar or $10,000 bar or something like that. Those were fine. Kit Kats were fine. You can't, even today, you cannot get me to eat a Milky Way. That's not happening. I can't stand Milky Ways. I don't know what nougat is, and I don't know why nougat is such a popular thing in candy. And Three Musketeers, my goodness, I would package up all of the Three Musketeers and Milky Ways that I got. I would box them up and we would ship them off to food cupboards, because there was no way we were eating Milky Ways and Three Musketeers. No way. Can't even eat them today. Tootsie Rolls, guys. Today, if you're handing out candy, skip the Tootsie Rolls. Nobody wants the Tootsie Rolls. They're horrible. Nobody wants the Pixie Sticks. What is that? You're just sucking in sugar. Not good. Nobody. Fun Dips, garbage. I don't even get the concept of a Fun Dip. Like, can you eat that stick? Because I would always try to eat the stick. I don't know. We're always in for the Willy Wonka packet when we go buy our Halloween candy. We get the big packet of Willy Wonka candy, so you get the nerds and the Laffy Taffy, and I'm always good with that. We're eating that a few months after Halloween. But that was the good stuff, man. That was when it was, I don't know. Like I said in the beginning, there was something fresh about it. There was something exciting about it. And it's a feeling that we can't get back. And look, if you got kids and you're from the 80s and you try like I do to replicate the feeling, good luck with it and have some fun with it. But it's just memories of days long ago. So that's that, guys. That is Halloween of the 1980s. Scary movies. I mean, we've already talked about a lot of my movie interests. I'm actually not a fan of the Halloween series. I'm not a big Michael Myers fan. I just never got into it. To me, it was sort of like, I don't know, it was a cleaner version of Friday the 13th. More psychological version of Friday the 13th, more stealth, So I was never really into it. I never really liked it. But I did like when Halloween was on Halloween. I dug that. It was more special, it seemed, to catch a few minutes of the Halloween movies on Halloween. The Blob, I always remember the Blob on Halloween, whether it was the 50s version or the 80s version. I always remember USA just blasting those Halloween movies all night long. Good stuff. What are your memories? Talk about it like you always do on this channel. Bring the memories. What was special about Halloween? Do you try to recreate it today for your own kids? Or is it just another day that doesn't look like what it used to? Hope you all have fun on trick-or-treating, ladies and gentlemen. And this was the Back to the 80s Halloween special. We will see you soon. The regular Back to the 80s programming resumes with 1980 Part 3. And until then, happy Halloween and good night now.